It's like we're living in a terrible dream now, but sooner or later this nightmare will end. And while no one knows when we stop the pandemic, we can already try to imagine what our life will be like after it. How will the work change? Can we replace personal communication? How will governments control citizens for security purposes, and what can it lead to? What happens with food shortages, and will it be replaced by artificial counterparts? Today, we'll try to find answers to these questions. Put on a mask, wash your hands, and join us. Let's get going. A few months ago, no one even knew about the COVID-19, and today it seems there's not a single piece of news, video, or social media post without the words coronavirus, pandemic, or quarantine. Well, we really faced a horrid invisible enemy, and some experts say that the world will face more terrifying consequences than after World War II. However, in contrast with an ordinary war, this enemy cannot be bombed in response. Still, despite the grim forecasts of an economic crisis, something good awaits us after the pandemic. Let's try to focus on the light of hope in these strange times. By the way, how do you think our lives will change after the pandemic? Write in the comments. It'll be interesting to return to this video in a few months, read your thoughts, and see what's come true and what has not. People experience forced loneliness in various manners. Some organize Zoom parties so as not to lose their status as an alcoholic. Some do hellish workouts with an iron and other household items. Some even manage to go on romantic dates to the living room. And some rise to the superhuman level and refuse human communication with the decisive wave of a worn-out hand. These people choose robots equipped with AI. More precisely, sex robots.
Okay, I will be here.
Companies like Abyss Creations and Robot Companion offer replacing the ever-displeased girls with super realistic dolls. And although the initial function of these robots is to act as a sexual partner, some owners use them for non-sexual activities. For example, for posing in photos or even talking. You'll always have someone to discuss new heroes in Dota with, right? The appearance and even temperature of the silicone body of such dolls can be changed depending on the owner's mood. And not only with the help of wigs and makeup, you can buy a different head for your doll. Switch to a new one and now you proudly boast of your sexy girlfriend in front of non-existent friends. Jokes aside, the sex entertainment industry has long been at the forefront of technological development. Blu-ray, high-quality streaming, and now smart robots that can become almost members of the family. All this is largely the merit of porn kings. Perhaps after the pandemic, people will be afraid of human contact so much that robots will become more popular than ever before. We won't be surprised if in a few years you come to a Tinder date and a powerful metal hand will shake yours, and you won't even notice. While the US and Europe are fighting fiercely against the pandemic, China has managed to take control of the virus fast. Why then, Europe, which had been warning about the epidemic for several months, was hit harder than China, where the coronavirus outbreak started and where the population is much more numerous? The Chinese government has acted tough and on a large scale, taking unpopular decisions and realizing the serious economic damage as the cost of containing the disease. Tens of millions of people were forbidden from leaving their cities and even homes, except for food and medical care. Checkpoints were set up and drones were used to track people. The army and police tightly controlled the movements of people in China, using the latest advances in face recognition. The system has long been widely used in the country, destroying even a semblance of personal space. But it also faced a problem when the residents, following the government's instructions, put on face masks. The Hanwha company came to aid. Its algorithm is able to correctly recognize masked people in 95% of cases. When receiving data from the camera, the algorithm compares covered faces not only with the original images from the existing database, but also with virtual masked faces generated on the basis of these images. The entire recognition process in this case lasts less than 1 second. China imposed restrictions on hundreds of millions of people, which led to the closure of entire economic sectors. But thanks to such severe measures, they managed to contain the epidemic and, most importantly, save lives. A free democratic society cannot stand aside watching China's experience, which means that lots of measures taken there will be applied here as well. Google and Apple have already teamed up to develop a common solution to help track whom coronavirus-infected people are in contact with. Do you think when the pandemic passes, the CIA will give the go-ahead saying, "Yeah, of course, we're closing this program. We're not at all interested in people's personal data"? Today we sit at home because there is a dangerous virus outside, and tomorrow, because police patrols monitor our every move. Is personal freedom worth the health of millions of people? Coronavirus will make humanity answer this question. Radically increased demand, supply disruptions, and a shortage of workers threaten food production and distribution. Governments are looking for ways to alleviate this shortage by creating green lanes for transporting food and easing the rules of movement for workers. Suppliers warn that there will be fewer and fewer fresh fruits and vegetables as the coronavirus epidemic impedes the global movement of products and people needed for harvesting. While European supermarkets say they continue to receive most of the products, pressure from suppliers is growing, and the situation's only getting worse. When food production by conventional methods becomes virtually impossible, artificial food can come to the rescue. Funded by Google founder Sergey Brin, the Mosa Meat startup grows burger patties in the lab. Memphis Meat builds meat from animal stem cells. These cells are fed with nutrients, while eliminating any disturbances and distortions in the growth of meat. The entrepreneur and programmer Rob Reinhart, despite not exactly printing food, still offers an interesting option. His project, Soylent, is a drink designed according to the creator's intention to completely replace traditional food. The product contains all the substances necessary for maintaining vital functions: carbohydrates, amino acids, proteins, fats, fiber, calcium, and much more. Soylent was initially sold as a powder soluble in water, but now the drinking version, Soylent 2.0, is already available. Write in the comments if you want to see a separate video about artificial food and whether it is possible to fry and eat your flip-flops. IT companies with offices located closest to the outbreak epicenters did not immediately talk about the possibility of remote work. At first, only employees who were willing to do so were offered to stay at home. But, as you know, everything went much further. Work from home has become a mandatory measure for everyone whose position implies that. All work conferences, interviews, and even government meetings have switched to video communications. Even the industry giants could not stay away and were forced to change their attitude towards the work process. In the hope that the virus problem would end briefly, Google first suggested that employees within the Bay Area work remotely. But very soon, the growing danger of COVID-19 became apparent, and the company sent all employees home in the United States, with other regions following after. Twitter said it greatly encourages work from home for all of its 5,000 employees, regardless of the office location. Now this measure has become mandatory. Even Apple, known for its putting secrecy above all and controlling all aspects of the development process, still allowed its employees to go and invent a new iPhone at home. Although secrecy in this case greatly interferes with employees. The developers who were sent home complain about the slow download speed and confusion about what kind of work they're allowed to do. Other employees were unable to access key internal systems due to Apple's tight security policies. Many engineers continue to work at the company headquarters to adhere to Apple's policy prohibiting any unreleased products from leaving the campus. It would seem that the issue of work has been resolved, but there are many nuances. After all, even in tech companies, dozens, if not even hundreds of service personnel were stripped of means for livelihood. Many large companies promise to resolve this issue, but it's still unknown when the global quarantine will end and how long the unemployed will have to wait. Pandemic could be a turning point for remote work in general. For many, this is their first remote work experience, and it turns out that their productivity has not only decreased, but in some cases has even increased. Will professionals want to return to the office? We have some doubts about that. By the way, you don't need to leave your home to subscribe to Brainframe. Just pressing the button and clicking on the bell is enough, so as not to miss new videos. Who would have thought, really? In general, coronavirus tests the strength of large and small businesses every day. In fact, we are participating in some kind of global experiment that will show how prepared we were for the crisis economically and what we can learn from it. So, artificial burgers will help us survive the epidemic and, God forbid, not lose weight. But isolation is putting increasing pressure on the psyche of people who lack not only social interaction, but access to the world. When you are limited by the four walls of your house, Virtual reality, VR, becomes that access. And although VR is primarily considered as a gaming platform, its capabilities extend far beyond the boundaries of online shootouts. A VR helmet provides us with new ways of interacting with each other without meeting physically, and allows us to explore new places, both real and fictional, without leaving home. For example, VR Chat offers millions of worlds created by users from all over the planet. And Rec Room goes even further and includes many different activities from paintball to joint quests with friends. Startup Altspace VR provides meeting places in virtual reality where users can attend live performances, lectures, and seminars. If you want to really plunge into a living virtual world with a cinematic history, then now you can't find anything better than Half-Life Alyx. Valve's project is the first AAA video game created for VR. Wearing a helmet, you take on the role of Alex Vance, a 19-year-old resistance soldier fighting with alien invaders in the anti-utopian Eastern European setting of City 17. The game has already become a hit and is praised by the VR community. Some even put the time spent there to good use. YouTube user Charles Coomber conducted a math lesson right within the game. The virtual teacher drew all calculations on the dirty windows of City 17. VR games and social VR applications have a long way to go before turning into our own universes, but even in their current form, meeting and drinking with the sidekick in a virtual bar seems like a good alternative to enforced loneliness. COVID-19 shook all of humanity, destroying a familiar way of life for millions of people. Isolation slowly becoming a habit, while safety measures and hygiene will never be the same again. Nevertheless, in the face of danger, humanity is gradually beginning to appreciate the opportunity to stay close with their loved ones every day, constantly inventing new ways to communicate and help each other. When the pandemic is defeated and we finally go outside, a new world will meet us. And you know, it looks like it will be a little better than the former, although we'll get it at a terrible price. In the meantime, wash your hands, wear a mask, and stay home. Brainframe out.